Eric Bischoff had some interesting stuff to say in a recent interview about how he would like to see things change in WWE. And when he talked about how things should change, and he was specifically talking about the how sanitized the product looked. He said that's part of the Raw. That's part of the flaw, sorry, with WWE creative, at least in my opinion, is that there's such a sameness to everything. On one show is red, one show is blue, and there's different names on the roster, but the look and feel, the storytelling technique, or lack thereof, everything feels so familiar and has felt so familiar for so long. I think it would need to be desanitized. The WWE is such a perfectly executed production that it doesn't even feel live anymore. It feels like you're watching a feature film. I think with wrestling, because of what it is, an arena-based event, you want the viewers at home to feel like they're part of the event. Sometimes overproducing that show can take that away from the home viewer. Interesting take from Bischoff there about just, Raw versus SmackDown itself, Finn, and how, they do look the same. It's the same set. It's the same. The arena looks exactly the same. Do you think if Raw and SmackDown were to look different in some way and have their own identities, that it would draw people to watch more, or to watch one show more than they used to?
I'm not sure really. With Raw, the problem, we've talked about this before, is it's 3 hours. If it was 2 hours, I think it would be viewed very differently. SmackDown each week, in comparison to Raw, just flies by. We've discussed this before. But he's absolutely right. The shows do feel almost identical. You could take any portion of SmackDown and transpose it with a segment or a match from Raw, and it would feel exactly the same. It would not seem out of place. I seem to remember when Bischoff was there briefly and Heyman was briefly given the reins. I think there was a conscious effort made at that point to make them different from each other. I think that was something that did happen, certainly in the way that the programs were shot, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I think there was definitely an effort made to distinguish one from the other, certainly in the way they were presented. Do you remember that, Kenny, or am I imagining things there?
No, yeah, they did have... Raw looked slightly different to SmackDown. They were trying to make them feel different shows. But then obviously COVID happened, and then it all kind of went to shit. But, Hooligan Baby, Raw is unwatchable. The WWE product's absolutely horrible. I think Raw suffers from the 3-hour format. That it's so long anyway that you've kind of got to fight twice as hard to get people to watch it. And I think kind of in 2021, getting people to sit down for 3 hours is a big ask. So, you almost need to be doing so much more to get people to check it out. But,
I do agree that it would be... I actually totally disagree with Raw being horrible. I thought this week's Raw was actually very enjoyable. And I urge anyone who thinks that Raw is horrible to at least give it a chance. It has been in the past, absolutely, but it isn't now. I think it moves along... I think it's the best it's been in a long time. And I realise, that's not saying much in some, because, it has been a real chore at times. And I think like last year, maybe actually just before the pandemic, I remember it went through a period. I remember we discussed this. Actually, it was just before the big shake-up with Bischoff and Heyman being appointed showrunners of Raw and SmackDown.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Raw went through a phase where the third hour was just tantamount to torture. And it was just such a struggle. You're thinking, it's like, you're just not trying. It's like, do you not want people to watch this third hour? And all these conspiracy theories flying around, that they actually didn't want people to watch the third hour. And it was some sort of attempt to persuade the USA Network to reduce the show to 2 hours, which is obviously bogus, because WWE, as long as USA is willing to pay them for 3 hours, it's absolutely going to produce 3 hours because of how much TV revenue they get from the 3 hour broadcast. But getting back to what Bischoff said, I agree that I think strides should be made to make the two products slightly different, you should be watching Raw, you should know it's Raw. And if you're watching SmackDown, you should know it's SmackDown, and not just because the graphics are blue and it's a different roster and a different announce team. I think more could be done and that I think also would make the shows more appealing, because they would be so different. And people say, oh, did you see Raw? They did this, this and this. Oh, SmackDown on Friday won't be doing that. So we'll watch SmackDown because that's producing a different type of product. So I think that would be beneficial for both brands, and I think could potentially lead to increased viewing figures. It could boost the numbers each week, which I'm sure WWE would be very appreciative of, very grateful if its numbers did go up. So yeah, I agree. I think it's something that should happen.